Download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks.
Patrons get those perks.
Woo!
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and he should know. He studied the podcast actuarial tables. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
Ahoy!
Each week we'll chat about movies, TV, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest this week. Lazy, Vulgar, Rancid Little Philistines was the name of his grade school jazz band. It's Ian Whittington, ladies and gentlemen.
I am greatly offended. I did not have anything to do with jazz at any point in my life, ever.
Why you gotta break the verbal reality? Why you gotta break the... Why can't you just yes and, Ian?
Because there's enough.
Don't you know how improv worked?
There's enough of that in the world. I'll take everything else, but I will not take jazz.
That must be the British version of improvisation instead of yes and it's no but.
Yeah, it's no but.
No but.
Yeah. No, but what I have to say is better.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I'm sure it is. Well, we are glad to have you back and glad to be chatting about movies live again, doing a live show. We do these as much as we can, and already the live audience chiming in and just making us feel so good about coming to you live on the internets, which is a thing apparently you can do. I don't know. Who knows?
Wait, what? Not in England.
So
we don't have it yet. We don't have the internet.
Not over there. Not over there quite yet. We are going to do some movie talk. I will say, I think it was out there for a second that we were going to talk about Poor Things. We already reviewed Poor Things on this show a while back. That was my mistake. But instead, there are now 2 Best Picture nominees we have not talked about for an official review. And so we're going to do one of those. We're going to do The Holdovers. The other one, by the way, I think is Zone of Interest. I don't think we've done an official review on Zone of Interest. So maybe that'll be coming sometime. Who knows? But today we're going to do Holdovers and then also talk about a new animated film that's on Netflix called Orion and the Dark. Charlie Kaufman wrote it and Netflix produced it. So we're going to talk about that one as well. Then, of course, we'll do some Best Ever Challenge, a rather subjective, interesting Best Ever Challenge today. This is going to be fun. These are our best ever movies that should have had Charlie Kaufman involved with them somehow. Like, it just feels like it's got Kaufman's fingerprints on it, even though he wasn't involved. That'll be fun. And then, of course, we'll do some buried treasure at the end. I will remind you before we get into it that the link to make your Sposkers pick is live at the website. Go to sifpop.com. Click up at the top where it says Sposkers, and it will take you to the form. You fill out your choices for all the Oscar categories, and then whoever gets the most right, we will find out on live Sposkers broadcast evening, which will take place, get this, in conjunction with the live Oscar broadcast. It's a wild idea we had. So yeah, we're going to do it that way. And we have a lot of fun. We kind of go through the night as the awards come in, keep updating it, kind of see how people are doing, see what the scores are, and then crown a winner at the end of that. So get your picks in now. Don't wait, because, if you wait, you might forget. Also, I want to wait till the last day so I can get them all right. And if you wait, then you might beat me. So
Wait, are you more likely to do it the later you submit them?
I'm just being silly. I actually submit mine right away. But but there is something like, there are people who are like, I wait till the last second because who knows how the momentum's gonna shift and what's gonna
see if anybody gets
happen.
cancelled.
That's what I do.
You know,
Well,
yeah.
not in the canceling part, but I do wait until the last minute before I put mine in.
Yeah. So there you go. Head to, again, sifpop.com and click on Sposkers if you want to play along with that. Well, we got some movies to talk about, so let's kick it off with the new one. Let's talk a little bit about Orion and the Dark. A boy with an active imagination faces his fears on an unforgettable journey through the night with his new friend, a giant smiling creature named Dark. This, again, as mentioned, is a new animated film on Netflix. And Charlie Kaufman wrote it, but then it was produced by Netflix and brought to the screen. Some voices you may know, including Paul Walter Hauser, who's always a lot of fun. What did you guys think of Orion in the Dark? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Ian, start us off.
I liked it.
Ian liked it. Andrew?
It's okay. High side of okay.
High side of just okay. I'm going to go with liked it as well. And kind of right in the middle of liked it. Ian, it sounds like we have kind of similar views. What are some of the things you enjoyed about Orion in the Dark?
I want to encourage DreamWorks, because this has still got DreamWorks attached to it.
Yes.
I want to encourage them to do this more. Like, I loved that this was kind of a bit Pixar-y, but like kind of a diet version of Pixar in the noughts and early tens, which is still better than what Pixar is doing now. But it's not like,
you act like Inside Out didn't come out like 8 years ago or whatever. Like
that's exactly the time period I'm talking about. That was ages ago. Like, that's what, 20. How long ago is that? 2015? 2016?
Yeah, I think it was 2015.
Yeah. Okay. That's the region that I'm talking about and before. But I really like that element of this movie. It's got a beautiful heart to it. I think it describes definitely my experience as a kid really, really, really well. It's interesting that they had the foresight to watch my life as I was growing up and then make a movie about it in 2024 without my permission. So that opening, like 20 minutes to 30 minutes, sucked me in and really, really had me invested.
Yeah, it's certainly appropriate you mentioned Pixar. This really feels like, outside in, instead of inside out. Like, you've got the characters that kind of represent things. Or Soul did a lot of this as well, which again is not very long ago. So yeah, there's this idea that we are starting to bring characters to metaphysical presence, like ideas were, and I just think we kind of have Pete Docter to thank for this. Like, before Inside Out, it was kind of one of those things that they were afraid to do, and it worked with Inside Out, and now they've done it several more times, including in this one. I did have that initial thing where I was watching this and I was like, he's kind of stealing the Inside Out thing. But the places this movie goes and the ways that it builds these characters make it wholly unique and very, very engaging. And I think the biggest testament to that for me is the fact that I did not live this growing up. I had zero anxiety or fears growing up. I was sickeningly self-confident and you know what I mean? Like, I was that guy, And
when I knew this movie got me was when it was the bully thing and punching him in the nose, because my parents said, look me in the eyes, you have our full permission to punch a bully. Like, if they are harassing you that much, you punch them. And I had that thought, what if I kill them? What if I break their nose? What if the one and only fight I get into is the one where I kill a kid? Like, and that just like those thoughts when you're an overthinker just consume you.
I just when people would challenge me to violence, I always thought they were kidding. I always thought it was a joke. I didn't understand. I was just like, oh, that's a funny one. But yeah, but the point I'm making is I don't connect to this on a deep level very much at all, but it still sucked me in because I was able to see the world through the character's eyes. It's a very well-built central character. There's some really interesting things it's doing with the structure and the way it's telling the story, which, thank you, Charlie Kaufman. Like you knew that was going to be in there somewhere. And I really liked all that stuff. And so I found myself more invested than I thought I was going to be based on my very boring childhood where I was optimistic about everything.
No one's making movies about your childhood, Aaron.
Nope. That's not true. There are a couple, but yeah, for the most part, we like to deal with the trauma of childhood, which I was privileged enough not to have a lot of that. Andrew, what about you? What are some of your thoughts?
Well, for the rest of us that had survival instincts growing up and knew that we should be afraid of things, there are so many layers to this film. There's a surface commentary on being young and afraid of everything, but then there's also this additional layer showing that the adults can be afraid too, and that we sometimes never grow out of our fears of certain things, and that's okay. This movie it could have so simply just been the story of Jacob Tremblay and Paul Walter Hauser's character, The Dark. It so easily could have been that. But it's Charlie Kaufman, and he doesn't do simple. So there is so many different layers to this film, and I think that I really do appreciate them going the extra mile to try and give us this.
Yeah. Let's see, what else can we talk about? Do we want to talk about some of the voice performances? Jacob Tremblay continues to do great work with whatever he does. Like, it's clear he understands how to, embody a character. I mentioned Paul Walter Hauser, who plays the Dark. Was a lot of fun.
Great Seth Rogen impression.
That's exactly what I thought the entire movie. Like,
I had to look it up.
Really doing his best Seth Rogen, isn't he?
Yeah,
he kind of. I mean, does he just sound like? I thought it sounded like Paul Walter Hauser. Was he doing a voice?
Like Paul Walter Hauser doing a Seth Rogen impersonation.
Yeah, it sounded a bit extra to me. It sounded a little bit.
Okay.
What this might be a little bit mean, but what sold it to me, I was like, I'm getting some emotion and feeling from this. It can't be Seth Rogen. It must be someone else.
Nice. What else, guys? What else do you want to talk about?
Well, I don't want to spoil it too much, but I do love the structure. I think that for me, it was running out of steam a little bit when we got to the halfway mark, and it takes this turn and adjusts its direction, and it's kind of hanging a lantern on what it's trying to do as a story as well, and it gives it permission to go a lot further and bend some rules and be a little bit wackier. And I love it. That re-engaged me at a point where I'd started to drop off and thought, I've got the message. This was a great after school special. Let's move on. So that it did kind of re-engage me.
I feel that if this film committed more to the father-daughter elements, I think the message would have been better served. Because as it stands for me personally, it feels kind of like a high-budget Schoolhouse Rock feature film. Like it's not really. I wasn't endeared to any of the characters.
Well, I did want to talk about that the character part, like being endeared to the characters a little bit, because I do think it brought the movie down for me a little bit. That I think that what some of these characters represent in our metaphor for is kind of terrible, and it made it difficult for me to see them as like characters to have empathy for when they are whispering traumatic, terrible things into people's ears to keep them up at night. And I'm just like, I don't like you. Go away. I don't want you to. I don't understand why we want this. I don't understand who, like what the idea of how can I think even Dark is somebody to have empathy for or to find my way to when he's kind of leading this group of, you know,
misanthropes.
do-batters, you know, like
It's really interesting. I was waiting, and the movie didn't go this direction at all. I was waiting to find a clever reason for why Insomnia is doing the things that they're doing, and
Mhm.
why the noise robot is doing those things. And then you get a little bit, because in Insomnia is like, oh, I'm not doing it. These thoughts are already there. But I wanted, and I feel like Inside Out gives us a lot more meaning behind that, because
Yeah.
it's the most obvious comparison. This was just, you're just picking the things that happen and then personifying them. There's not much
Yeah.
more to it than that.
Yeah. And there, I think I understand what the movie wanted to do to distinguish itself from the typical animated movie, which is to say, no, we're going to make this, like, anxiety is, or fear, that's one of the Inside Out characters, right? I'm not wrong about that. One of them is the fear
think so.
character, the anxiety character, the guy, not Envy, not the
That's
green girl,
Rage.
the purple guy, not the red anger monster. Anyways, the idea is, in this case, it's like, no. That's like the polished version of anxiety. No. This is anxiety. Like this is Joaquin Phoenix and Boy is Afraid. Like this is,
Yeah.
you know, this is real stuff, not the fake stuff. So
We have Inside Out at home.
yes, that's right. So I think that's what the movie was trying to do. And in some ways, I respect it for being consistent to the vision of, we're not trying to polish over these things. We're not trying to eliminate these things. We're trying to figure out how to be functional human beings who deal with these things, who struggle with these things, who persevere through these things, not necessarily eliminate them or find some sort of resolution. This isn't a movie interested in resolution, I don't think. It's interested in a journey. It's interested in a story. But, you know, the emotion you receive at the end, which, by the way, I did. I you know, of course, welled up a little bit at the end, had some ocular wellitude. And that is, I think, in many ways due to the movie's ability to connect me to the relationships, not necessarily the resolution of the story. So, yeah. What about you guys?
I wasn't listening.
Yeah, I was too busy having somebody whisper in my ear. Yeah, I see what you mean. I get that. I guess it's almost like a split purposes, because we don't, those metaphors aren't really our main cast. Like, our main person is the father and son characters. Sorry, father and daughter characters. But I do enjoy how it's doing that generational thing between them, and maybe how we're passing trauma onto our kids without realizing it. And I do love how she calls him out and says, I know what you're doing, but you know what? Keep doing it. That's fine. That's still what we look for from our parents.
I didn't really, this is maybe it's just me, but I didn't really take it that way. I took it more along the lines of our parents. Aaron has said this before, but we're all still kids, really. No matter how much we grow up, sometimes, like, whenever we look at our parents, maybe we still see ourselves as kids, you know? And I think that is kind of what this movie's saying. I think this movie's talking about, like, just because you grow up doesn't mean that you don't have to be afraid of things anymore. I think that it's okay to be afraid of things. It's a survival instinct. It's part of human nature to be afraid of things. There's a difference, though, whenever you allow that fear to control every aspect of your being. And I think that that's what this movie's trying to say. Stay out of your own head as best you can. Realize that it is okay to be afraid of things, but try to understand them. I think maybe that could be what this movie's trying to say. Try to understand what makes you afraid, because then maybe once you do, it won't be so scary anymore.
Yeah. And to be clear, of course I was scared of things as a kid. I'm still scared of things as an adult. There are things that, you know, like Ian has seen me get on my hands and knees to crawl down.
Nope, that's not what you said.
A hill. So like I am scared of falling from you know, heights, because I don't want to die. But like that existential thing of, you know, like the darkness, or whatever the case is just, it's not some, it's just like, I don't know, there's a part of me that's like, why worry about something you can't control? I don't know, like, it's just, for whatever reason, my brain won't worry about those things. When I'm afraid of falling, it's something I can somewhat control. I can not go to high places, I can not walk near the edge, I can those kind of things. But things where it's like completely outside of my control, I don't know if it was just training or if it's just my personality. It just, I don't linger on those things.
It's hard to control day-to-day things that make you anxious. It's like getting out of bed, I have to do this, but it's making me very anxious.
Yeah.
I'm going to say one thing that really confused me about the movie a little bit. You mentioned it earlier, is Dark. I didn't really get Dark as a mentor or a guide because he's a big old sourpuss. He's just like, I hate the sunlight. I keep getting chased. Everyone hates me. I'm fed up of being hated. And then he just gives up. And I'm sure you could probably write essays about the deeper underlying meanings of that. But he just really confused me as a mentor and a guide. And maybe that's deliberate.
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's some wisdom in understanding there's a difference between processing reality and denial. And I think sometimes people want to deal with anxiety with denial. They want to deal with it by saying dark doesn't exist. Dark isn't a thing. Dark is terrible. It's not, instead of making peace with the reality of the situation and finding a way to process through it. And I think the movie is just saying, it's not sunshine and rainbows. It's not, and the ability to find your way to some sort of relationship with the darkness or some sort of peace with the existence of dark is a really powerful human ability. And can lead to the ability to find joy, to find love, to find these other things that the movie, eventually, walks us into. I love the ending of this movie. I think the ending of this movie really, really works. So yeah. Any final thoughts on Orion and the Dark, other than how terrible a name that is for this movie?
It's not great. No, it's not. No, I think that about covers it. It's pretty much on. It was pretty much on the surface.
Well, there you go. Orion and the Dark is on Netflix, and you can check it out there. I think
the animation style. Sorry, that was my last thing. I really like the animation style.
There you go. All right, let's move on to our next review. Let's talk about a movie that's been out for a while. Let's chat a little bit about The Holdovers. A curmudgeonly instructor at a New England prep school is forced to remain on campus during Christmas break to babysit the handful of students with nowhere to go. Paul Giamatti, Oscar nominated Paul Giamatti for his role in The Holdovers. Dominic Sessa, not nominated for his role, though maybe he should have been. Divine Joy Randolph as Mary Lamb, nominated and projected to win for her.
Probably going to win.
for her role here in this movie, and many others. What did you guys think of The Holdovers? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Andrew, kick us off.
Love it.
Ian.
Yeah, I loved it too.
And I loved it as well. You know why? Because this movie's amazing.
Yeah,
This is such a great movie. Andrew, why don't you start? Tell us about why you love this movie.
This is Paul Giamatti's best performance. He's fully immersed in this role as Professor Hunnam. It is particularly impressive because it is a performance that delivers both nuance and animation. This is a guy who, whenever he needs to be subtle in his performance, he can be subtle. But then there are also parts of this movie that are very cartoonish and slapstickish, and it's really fun to see a character have that much range this actor to have that much range in their performance. Speaking of performances, Divine is stellar in this film. There's no way she's gonna lose. I shouldn't say that, but it's not.
You've done it
not
now.
Looking good for anybody else.
When she doesn't win, we all know who to blame.
This moment.
Yep. The way she keeps her composure until she can't anymore is breathtaking. this grieving mother exemplifies strength and dignity. It's a movie filled with great casting and stellar performances.
Ian, some thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's a great summary. Paul Giamatti really, like, we know he's great, but it's a bit of a surprise. Like, just this movie comes out and he just absolutely dominates. He's so good, and I love a Doctor House character, and I think he doesn't. Just so many people get it wrong and just go too extreme and think that you just gotta hate the world and be a cynic about everything. He has this amazing balance, and this is obviously in the writing as well. This amazing balance to pull it back and find some humanity. He's not completely lost to cynicism, and the Mary Lamb, he's like what's the word, foil in this movie, I guess. It just it's the perfect balance to bring him back, and just with like a little eyeball, just be like, too far. Like, kid doesn't need that. It's just the balance between Dominic Sessa's character as well, just the balance between the three of them. They kind of represent all of humanity just in one little trio, and that's just a great story.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the little things in this movie. I think this is one of those movies where it just doesn't let up with the charm. Like, there's just little things all of the time. And that's not to say that this is a movie that depends on charisma, because that's not it. It's not like, oh, these are, bright, shining superstars who just own the screen. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's just a charm in all the authenticity of the moments. There's a moment involving giving a gift, and that becomes a running gag about this gift that is given. Just stuff like that. Little things that are said here or there. It's just non-stop through this movie. It doesn't give you a chance to get unjoyful. Like, it doesn't give you a chance to get uninvested. It's always doing these little things to keep your attention and to, tell you a new, part of the story. It's also a movie that's unafraid to kind of change its course. What I mean by that is you get a sense when you start off that we're dealing with Dead Poets Society, right? We're dealing with...
That's exactly what I was thinking.
We're dealing with... charter school, where charter school is not the word I'm looking for, boarding school kind of stuff. And so we're gonna meet our crew. We're gonna meet all the kids.
Spend some time with them.
We're gonna spend some time with them. We're gonna get to know who they are, and we're gonna see how all of these stories carry on through the end of this movie. And then 20 minutes in, we're like, oh, it's just him. It's like, oh, it's so this good. Now. And the movie is unafraid to be this now. It doesn't feel like it has to be the same thing throughout. It follows the story, not necessarily the structure. And I think that's not always easy for a movie to do, especially because screenplays are such an art now, where writers understand how the 3-act structure works, and here's what you do here, and here's how you do this. And at some point, you can lose the humanity inside of an equation. And this movie does not do that. It just feels like we are witness to a story that is happening. And that's unique. That feels very unique. And I mean, you add to it all the things you guys already talked about with the performances and all those things, and it's just a really good experience to watch. So very rewatchable.
It is. It might be one of those movies. Phil is bringing up screenshots, and I think you could bring up any screenshot from out the movie, and it will bring an emotion. Like that scene where he's holding the book and he's speaking to the sex worker is just a hilarious scene, and it's the writing throughout that is so sharp and so deliberate and insightful. Like, there are movies that don't waste a single word, and that just that tingles when you know you're in the middle of that. Every sentence is deliberate, it's beautifully directed. It's so fun to watch a movie this well put together. It also has, for me, some of the best setup and payoffs consistently throughout the movie that I'm like, oh, they're not going to pay that off. They're not going to pay that off. And by the end, pretty much everything is paid off. It's so good.
Yeah, it's structured really nicely like that, or I should say, it's put together really nicely like that. What's your history
That's
with
the Alexander Payne element of it all.
I
isn't
was
it?
just going to bring up Payne. What is your guys' experience with Payne movies? Do you usually love them? Do you usually not? I'll run through them for you. Do you usually not enjoy them? Is it kind of hit or miss for you? Really,
love 'em.
he came into prominence with Election. That was probably the first one that a lot of people knew. Then there was About Schmidt, the Jack Nicholson movie. Sideways was kind of the next level of prominence, I think, for him.
Sideways was my introduction.
Then Paris Je t'aime, which I don't think I've ever seen. I don't know what that is. Maybe I'm misreading.
That is French, Aaron.
Well, thank you, Ian. Thank you. You live right near there, so it's good to know. The Descendants, Nebraska, Downsizing, and now The Holdovers. Yeah. What do you think of his career?
I'm realizing that I have not seen one of those movies, and
Not a single one.
I haven't seen any of them. I
All
know
right, you need to come back to
Downsizing.
town, and we'll do an Alexander Payne.
Heck yeah. I know
Oh, yes,
Downsizing by
please.
reputation. But yeah, no, I have a massive pain, and I can just end that sentence there. I haven't seen any of them.
Yep. Andrew, what's your kind of Alexander Payne experience?
Well, I like I said, my first introduction to him was with Sideways, and Sideways is one of my favorite movies. I think it's just stellar. It doesn't have the the upbeat happiness of Holdovers. It is a very depressing movie, but it's shot in its background is Napa Valley, so it's just this incredibly gorgeous California scenery of these wine vineyards, and it's just beautiful to look at. But you have this guy who is so unbearably depressing, and is it Thomas Hayden Church? Is that who is also in that movie?
In Sideways, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And then, of course, The Descendants is great, and I love Nebraska. I get people's commentary on Nebraska. Why is it black and white? It doesn't add anything to the film. I get that. But at the same time, I think it's a fun movie. But yeah, I like Alexander Payne.
I am hit or miss with him, mostly miss, honestly. Election's fine. I like Election. About Schmidt is kind of mid for me. Sideways is good. But I'm still not like loving his stuff. Spoiler alert, Holdovers is my favorite Alexander Payne movie, which is saying something because The Descendants is really good. That's my other like Alexander Payne masterpiece. I think The Descendants, that's George Clooney in Hawaii.
Yeah.
I think that is really, really good. I don't like Nebraska. I didn't like Downsizing. So he was kind of on a cold streak for me, and then the Holdovers bringing me back. But it's really the Holdovers and the Descendants for me. Everything else I could kind of take or leave. I know that's weird because Sideways is such a huge hit. It's good. It's a good movie, but it's just not next level, in my opinion. So yeah, he's been an interesting director to kind of follow. And I mean, the Holdovers brings me to a place where I'm like, okay, all right, well then, I'm back in. Like, if you're gonna do stuff like this, then that's that's gonna speak a lot for how much I might enjoy. Now, he didn't write it. It wasn't his script, so maybe part of it is choosing good scripts and finding good scripts. And this is certainly a great script, and so it'll be that may be part of the equation as well. Other thoughts on the Holdovers?
I love
It's a little bit slower paced than a lot of movies that came out last year. That's not an issue for me, but I think that's one that needs to have people be aware of. It's a slower paced film.
I love it, but I was just like, it was a balm to my soul.
You say it's slow paced, Andrew, but I'm telling you, it didn't feel slow to me at all. Like I thought there was a moment. I think maybe what you mean is like, or how I would interpret it, the narrative spin I would put on it, is that it's not explosive. It's not one of those movies that you go to.
It's
and
not. Yeah,
there's
that's probably better.
action
Yeah.
in, you know, those kind of things. The momentum and the intensity of it is cerebral in many ways, or comedic, or story based. But I never felt bored. There was always
no.
something to make me laugh or keep my attention. So I wouldn't call it slow paced. I would call it
Dialogue heavy.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. Yeah, I could go that route. Any other thoughts?
I love the choice to. It's a period piece, isn't it? It's set. It's not set. It's set in like the 80s or 90s, right?
Oh yeah, got to go back far enough that nobody has a cell phone. Otherwise, your movie gets really boring really fast.
Yes, exactly. And I love that choice, not just because of the cell phone thing, but it does have this Dead Poet Society Breakfast Club like sheen across it as well. I don't know, like I wouldn't have missed it if it wasn't there, but now that like knowing it's there, I'm just like, I can't imagine this movie being any other way, and I can't quite articulate how it impacts the movie, but it feels like this is a classic movie that I'm watching for the first time. It ages the movie and gives it maybe a prestige beyond a movie that you're watching in 2024 that came out in 2024. Like it's the credits, the way it's filmed, just immediately elevated it for me. I was like, oh, this is a classic, confident movie.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on the Holdovers before we move on?
No post-credit scene.
Which eye should you stare at?
It's a good question. It's the ultimate question. All right. Well, that is the Holdovers. By the way, that is streaming now on Peacock. If you want to see it, it has been out. It has been on VOD, and now it's streaming on Peacock. So if you happen to have that one of the streaming services, you can check it out. And I think we would clearly all recommend that you do so.
Absolutely.
It is really, really good. Before we head on to the best ever challenge, big thank you to our SIFPOP members. We did a pre-show for our members today, and we often like to do that. Andrew runs those and does some Do We Cares, and we answer a question from you and have all sorts of fun. We talked about twist endings that we hate in this one, so if you're interested in that,
my eyes twitching.
So
mad.
Yes,
so mad.
Made Ian very, very angry. So if you would like to hear angry Ian, you can go to patreon.com/SIFPOP. Check it all out there. Support starts at $3 a month, and we appreciate whatever you do. Even if it's just telling friends about what we do, that means the world to us. So thank you for that. But again, that website is patreon.com/SIFPOP. All right, on to the best ever challenge. Let's have some fun. I'm calling this Should Have Been Kaufman. That is the name of this best ever challenge. We will go number 5 to number 1, and along the way, Trump. We will trump anything that we have higher. It would be so fun if we actually had to trump on this one. Like because then it's like, oh wow, we both kind of had the same thought on this movie kind of thing.
Your email did say Kaufman or like Kaufman.
No, like Kaufman is it, not Kaufman. There should be no movies.
No, that's not what the email said.
Is it? Oh, I'm sorry.
Because I have 4 Kaufmans and 1 like Kaufman.
Oh, well, that was not the intent. Ian, is that what you did as well?
This is gonna get even better.
Okay.
Because I did not realize that Charlie directed this movie, and your email didn't specify
Andy
Charlie.
Kaufman.
So I went Andy, realized that I haven't seen any Andy Kaufman movies. So I had to like improvise, and I was just going to bounce off of what you guys are saying. And then I looked at Charlie and realized I haven't seen any of his movies either.
Well, that was the idea, is that you didn't have to see his movies to be involved in this list. Okay, this will be really fun. There will clearly be no crossover because Andrew did Charlie Kaufman movies. I did no Charlie Kaufman movies, and Ian
doesn't have a list.
doesn't have a list.
This is what the email says: top 5 movies that Kaufman wrote,
I'm reading
directed,
it.
or just feel like he should have.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that was.
I have one. I do have one.
I just read it. What this is a lesson never to get creative. Just stop being creative. Just never stretch the format.
Just stay in the box, Aaron.
Stay in the lane. Just stay in your lane, man. Just stay in your lane. The chat chiming in. Nick chiming in to say this whole situation is all very Charlie Kaufman.
Yes.
So yes, we will do our best to. Here's what we're gonna do, Ian. You could talk a little bit about what you did find, and then so what is your knowledge of Charlie Kaufman? Let's start there, Ian. What is your knowledge of Charlie Kaufman?
I know he did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yes,
that's my cultural awareness. That is it. So I can try and pick out some movies that are that adjacent, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
That was the idea I had. It is not what I wrote, and it is not what we've done today. So all the blame is on my shoulders. That is clear. But I am excited to hear kind of what movies you think might feel like a Charlie Kaufman movie. I will give you. Well, actually, Andrew, why don't you do your list all the way through?
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
because there will be no Trumps, and most of your list is Charlie Kaufman, and that'll give Ian a sense of the other movies that Charlie Kaufman has written or directed or done.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so at my number 5, I have Being John Malkovich, which is a wild, wild movie. I don't even know how to recommend that movie to somebody. Just if you really like John Malkovich, then this movie's for you. My number 4 is I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This is a newer Charlie Kaufman movie. Wow, this movie has so much to say about relationships and moving on and grief, and the title can be so subjective. Does it mean I'm thinking of ending things in this relationship? Does it mean I am thinking of ending things, which is very dark and morbid? But you never know where this movie's going to go, and it's mainly just Jesse Plemons and, please forgive me, I'm blanking on her name. But it's just them sitting in a car for it's a very Locke-esque film. Just them sitting in the car talking. And then it gets very Kaufman at the end. Number 3, I have Adaptation.
Which is the same. Before you move on, Jessie Buckley is who you were trying to think of.
Thank you.
Toni Collette is in the movie as well, and she's phenomenal. I love this movie, and a lot of people didn't. This movie came and went, and not a lot of people that year talked about I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I think it's a really great movie. So, yeah. Continue.
Yeah. Number 3, I have Adaptation. I would say besides Dream Scenario, which just came out last year, this is Nick Cage's best performance that I've seen.
Oh, one of my answers.
I thought you had only seen Sunshine, Eternal Sunshine.
Is Dream Scenario Charlie Kaufman?
Oh, no. Adaptation is.
I'm talking Adaptation.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm making lists. I'm writing stuff down now. Dream Scenario popped into my head.
Well, he's
then,
not
I
saying
won't
Dream
talk about
Scenario.
that.
Patience, Ian. Continue, Andrew.
Where was Adaptation. Adaptation, yeah. This is meta done to the ultimate perfection right here. In a way that I don't think any movie could ever duplicate, because you would just get flagged for saying, hey, you're just doing adaptation again. Be original. Number 2, this is my Kaufman-esque film. So this may be, you want me to skip it?
No, let's go ahead and hear it. It'll be interesting if I have it too. That'll be fun. But yeah, we'll all do our list individually this week, since I screwed it up so bad.
Number 2 is where I have Her.
I had that on my list.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think Her feels very much like a Kaufman film. Maybe it's just the Spike element of it all, because he can turn it on just like that.
You had that at your number 2?
Yes.
That's my number 2 as well. So
Oh, cool.
yeah.
See? Oh, I'm curious to know what your number 1 is now, because that's what I would
Well,
have pegged for your number 1.
there's a reason. See, Kaufman collaborated with Spike Jonze quite a bit, and this is a Spike Jonze written, directed movie. So like,
Yeah.
that influence is clearly there. They vibe really well together. It makes a lot of sense that her would feel very Kaufman-esque. So yeah, that was one of my choices.
Yeah. And Scarlett Johansson gives one of the best voice performances of all time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And number 1 is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which
There
I
you
think
go.
is Jim Carrey's best performance.
I will go with my Kaufman-esque movies next, and I will say I don't know why I put that Kaufman wrote directed in that. It was not my intention. It was just supposed to be like that's why it's Kaufman-esque. But there it is. I wrote it in there, so I totally
Yeah,
get
because
it.
even the Gurus, they put
Yeah.
Kaufman movies into.
I'm so sad I screwed it up because I think it's a really fun thing to like kind of think outside the box. But I've learned my lesson. It won't happen again.
Never have fun again, according to
Never.
Aaron Dicer.
Stop it.
So here are my top 5 movies that Charlie Kaufman could have been involved in, that Kaufman-esque, should have been Kaufman. Number 5, probably the most interesting one on my list, Bo Burnham's Inside. There is something very Kaufman about the meta way that Bo Burnham creates this special. You can see Charlie Kaufman writing the character of Bo Burnham. Now, we know that's not what happened. We know that's, this was Bo Burnham dealing with the pandemic and, creativity during the pandemic. But you can see in a fictional sense, Charlie Kaufman writing this as a movie, as a story, because of the way his brain works and the themes that he likes to deal with. So I put Bo Burnham's Inside at number 5 on
That's
my
an
list.
inspired choice, and I love it.
Thank you. Number 4, I have Everything Everywhere All at Once. There's a lot of this movie that feels like it could have been written or directed by Charlie Kaufman. The way it interacts with each other, the quirkiness of it, the way it folds in on itself, all of those things feel very Kaufman-esque to me. So I have that at number 4. My number 3 is Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day feels like a Kaufman movie to me in a lot of ways. Like there's, the repeating days. It's an interesting concept. It's very quirky and fun. It feels to me like something if Kaufman had been alive. Well, I think he was alive. I don't know when Kaufman was born, but if he had been making movies when Groundhog Day came out, then it would have been something. I think he would have done something like that. We mentioned Her at number 2. That was my number 2 as well. And then my number 1 movie that Kaufman shoulda, coulda been involved in is The Truman Show. The Truman Show feels very much like the themes that he likes to deal with, very quirky and interesting, and also deals with the idea of how media impacts the world around us. It's interesting because it shares a lot of the themes with your number 1 and the only one that Ian's seen, Eternal Sunshine, and it also shares Jim Carrey with Eternal Sunshine as well. It's interesting how similar those movies can feel to each other in some ways. But yes, so there you go, Ian.
So
what have you thought of during this?
I've done it. I have 5 movies, and full disclosure, I finished my list when Andrew finished talking. So here's my list: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 5. I think it gets better as the list progresses.
Generally, that's how it's supposed to work.
No, I mean as in my application, how applicable these movies are.
Okay, all right.
Last Action Hero.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
A little bit of like self-awareness and interesting conceit. Number 4, Stranger Than Fiction.
I had that in my honorable mentions.
Yay! Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's a great
Very
choice.
good pick.
Yeah, Stranger Than Fiction.
very good
It's a really good choice.
Very self-aware and super interesting conceit. More interesting than I think the movie delivers on. My number 3 was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind because it's the only one that I've seen. then Dream Scenario, which we mentioned, and I think that I was pretty confident that fits
I
the
agree.
bill, and
Yeah.
Andrew
Totally.
confirmed that. The one I'm proudest of, because it was my number one, The Truman Show.
Yay!
And the universe will never believe me. But I was like, when I started looking through this list and what you guys were mentioning, I was like, yeah, okay, Truman Show absolutely makes sense. So this has been an education for me. This has been incredible.
Good. I changed my mind. The lesson is to do this more. The other, and Andrew, if you have any like Kauffman-esque movies in your mind that you want to mention, like in the honorable mention section, we can do that. The only other one that I had thought of possibly including on my list was the Lego movie. There's something about the Lego movie that feels very Kaufman to me, with the way it interacts with its characters and the world building it does towards the end. Feels like something Kaufman could have written. But yeah, what about the Gurus / any others that you've thought of?
Believe it or not, the Gurus at number 3 have The Truman Show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the right answer to the question. Maybe that is.
It really is.
It has to be. Number 2, they had Adaptation, and at number 1, they had Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind.
There you go. Well, that was apparently a best ever challenge.
That was incredible. That was the best ever challenge.
When 20 years from now, when the category is best ever challenges,
yes, you'll write the question
This'll
wrong.
Be number
and we'll
2.
invent them.
This will be number 2, and number 1 will be that best ever challenge. That is the best ever challenges. That will be number 1. All right, let's finally move into buried treasure. What is that one thing in any area of pop culture that you want to make sure people know about? Ian, you're our guest, so you will go last. Andrew, why don't you kick us off?
Well, if you listen to the pre-show, the Moops, then you know what my buried treasure is going to be already. It is Rocky 2. We were talking about the passing of Carl Weathers, and I just want to reiterate everything that I said during the pre-show. I think that in Rocky 2, Carl Weathers really steps into his own, excuse me, and he takes on the role of the villain so much better than what I imagined him being able to do. Because it's just a man whose pride and dignity he feels are like in shambles because he didn't lose. He lost in his mind to a nobody. And what he starts getting that hate mail and everything, it made me, the passing of Carl Weathers unfortunately did make me really do appreciate his performance in Rocky 2.
Yeah. Rocky 2. It's kind of one of the, it's not necessarily one of the ones people usually mention. And I don't know why that is. I think it's probably because 4 is so like out there and in a lot of people's childhoods and, just kind of hit a lot of people at the same time as, a lot of pop culture was invading, kids of the 80s lives. But in 3 had Mr. T, and so I think that gets a little more recognition.
I predict pain.
And the original is often considered the, like the prestige one, like the one that was actually, worth, awards and that kind of stuff. So I think 2 gets forgotten, but 2's a good movie. Rocky 2 is decent.
I, for the first time ever watched all of the Rockies and all of the Creeds last year. Did not like Rocky 1 at all. Had such a bad time with it. And then loved the heck out of Rocky 2. And I don't think I've ever been more confused by a sequel. And then I went back and rewatched Rocky, and I was like, no, I like this movie. I have such a weird relationship with the Rocky franchise that I don't know what happened the day I watched Rocky the first time, but 2 saved the franchise for me. And then after that, I was like, I'm all in. Other than 5. 5 is garbage.
I knew Tommy Morrison, so I have a bit of family, familiarity.
Oh,
with
interesting.
him.
I don't think he's garbage. I think the movie is.
Yeah.
Ian, you need to do a podcast called like Scrambled Franchises or something.
Yes!
And like you can talk about Scream and Rocky
So good.
and yeah. And just
Fast and Furious is going to be the next one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Start with the Tokyo Drift and then jump to
Actually, I did it
7.
with Evil Dead. I watched Evil Dead the like 2013 one, then Rise, and then the other one. I don't like watching things in order. Apparently,
Yeah, apparently not. My buried treasure is a board game that I've been playing quite a bit, but I've been playing it on my phone as a mobile game. It is a game called Wingspan.
no, it's not.
It's yes, I'm sorry. I have dubbed this game Birds with Friends, and that has stuck amongst those of us who are playing. But yeah, so basically this is just a board game that deals with birds, and the birds have different kinds of nests. They have different kinds of foods that they eat, and
Superpowers.
they have different kinds of powers, and they have different environments that they live in. I'm not going to get into the details. It does feel very complicated at first, as many modern board games can. But there is something about this game that really connects to my brain's need to find permutations. And so there's a planning element of this game where you're planning which birds to play where, how that's going to impact all the different scoring opportunities, whether you're going to score for nectar, whether you're going to score for bonus points, whether you're going to score for objectives, end of round goals. Like there's all these different ways you score points. And so the idea is to put together a lineup based on the different permutations that scores the most points. So I've really been enjoying it, having a good time with it. And so I thought I would throw it out there for other people whose brains work the same way I do. I played the physical copy first. It's not just something that I've played on mobile. I did play the physical copy first. And I should mention there are 3 expansions to this game now, I think.
Yeah.
They're expanding to the birds of different continents. So like each expansion adds a continent. Like I think one's Europe, one's Asia. And so it just brings a whole new bunch of birds in and really changes the gameplay. There's a whole new game board for one of the expansions, and you have to take certain things out and put certain things in. There's whole new game dynamics. I mentioned Nectar. That's not actually in the base game. That's a part of the expansion. So if you play the mobile game, you play the base game unless you play an online match where you're like matched with other people. And if you do that, it actually has all the expansions. So you can play all the expansions if you do like a random online match game kind of thing. But I'm having a blast. Ian and I play. Currently, we're playing 6 games a day or so. In our spare time. So we're both kind of addicted to this. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, I think, kind of once you get into it. Ian, did you have any further thoughts on it?
Oh, it is. It's either, I think it's either a game that's going to tap into something or you'll throw it away. Like it is an involved game. It is a difficult one to second screen, because I will either lose something in the game or lose whatever is on the second screen that I'm watching. But it taps into this optimizing engine building thing in my brain as well that is very, very appealing. And it's pretty much the definition of minutes to learn, eternity to master, because there's so many permutations.
I was thinking how chess-like this game is in that there are so many moving pieces that you're trying to think ahead a certain number of moves, but you also have to think ahead if this happens and then if this happens. So you're not just thinking, here are my next 5 moves. You're thinking, here are my next 5 moves if this is the case. Here are my next 5 moves if this is the case. Here's where I go if these are the kind of birds that I draw. Here's where I go if, so it's just keeping in mind a lot of those, possible moves. It feels very similar to chess in that way to me.
Yeah.
All right, Ian, what is your buried treasure?
My buried treasure is so dumb. It's Air Force One, which it feels dumb to have this action movie from the early 90s.
Are you talking about Harrison Ford's Air Force
Heck
One?
yeah, Harrison Ford's Air Force One.
What's wrong with that?
Never seen this movie. It was always like on my mum and dad's, like they have this big wall filled with DVDs and videos, and invariably we'd watch the same 3 over and over and over again. And Air Force One was always up there, and I never watched it. And a few months ago, I was watching the Jack Ryan movies, and that's obviously Harrison Ford heavy. And just jumped into Air Force One, and I love this movie so much. It's so fun, and it's what I love about it is that it's not Harrison Ford being super moody Harrison Ford, like as Indy and as Han Solo, Han, whatever, and as even as Jack Ryan, he's kind of this grumpy, moody, oh, I don't want to do this. But in this, he's the president of the United States. He's charismatic, but this is Harrison Ford dangerous because he uses his charisma and like turns it on. And it's Die Hard on a plane. I know Die Hard 2 is Die Hard with a plane, but it's basically Die Hard with a plane, and it's Gary Oldman doing an incredible Russian accent and being Hans Gruber. There is just nothing to not like about this movie. It's just a great 90s action movie with cheesy taglines. He boots an individual off of the plane and just said like this huge score builds up, and then the music cuts and he just says, "Get off my plane." It's so good. It gave me tingles. I think it's Jerry Goldsmith did the score in like 7 hours, and it's just so much fun. I love it.
There you go. Air Force One is available for rental or purchase on VOD. Rocky 2 is available on Max, and Wingspan is available on Android or Apple Play. And there you go. Those are our buried treasures, and I think we did it, guys. I think we managed to power
technically,
through.
we didn't.
To power through my sudden urge to be creative and still somehow made a podcast. Congratulations.
I hope you learned your lesson.
I have indeed. I will never learn any lessons. Thank you so much for joining us today for Sif Pop. It is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for coming by again today.
Thank you, buddy.
Big thanks to producer Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Thanks, Phil.
And thanks to Ian Whittington for coming by.
Yay.
Ian, where do you
me.
want people to find you?
Just on the internet and stuff. I do a Star Trek podcast where if you really want me angry, then I get angry on there when Danae disagrees with my Star Trek opinions and decides to hate on Darmok, which is just unthinkable. But we're currently doing an unconventional love theme for the kind of month of February-ish, and we're doing Star Trek episodes that are not just lovey-dovey, but take the love into new and interesting directions. So yeah, that's Captain's Pod, and then find me on X at Wits End.
He also gets angry when you tell him all the ships are called the Enterprise.
They're not.
See?
Just instinct. It erupts out of me.
What's the Klingon Enterprise called?
You're a get out.
Oh, God. I'm not as big as a Trekkie as Ian, and even I can get a little infuriated by that.
I could tell you what it is, but I'm not going to because I don't think you really want to know.
Fair enough. We do appreciate you being on. We also appreciate our Sif Pop members for supporting what goes on here. As mentioned, that support starts at $3 a month. If you want to check it all out with the bonus episodes, all that kind of fun stuff, it's at patreon.com/siftpop. You can connect with us by leaving a comment, a rating, or a review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. You can email us, feedback@sifpop.com if you want to send us an email. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too. So let them know about it and that listening is much easier than actually pondering what nothingness actually is. We'll be back next week with more fun, and we will see you then.
Bye.
Probably, is it Madam Web? Is that next? I think Madam Web comes out Thursday.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's such an interesting thing. Thank you, live chat, for being with us tonight. We appreciate it. It's always good to see you guys commenting and having fun with us and putting up with our shenanigans. So
I did email Phil saying, I haven't seen any Andy Kaufman movies, so I'm just going to wing it and see what happens.
It's amazing. Also, it'd been so long. I think I forgot to unmute myself at the beginning. I was watching you guys, and I was like, I usually kind of keep an eye on you for when I like deliver the line, just to see if it gets a reaction. I was like, oh man, this was a real loser this time. Nobody reacted at all.
Tough audience.
And it's not a great
you
one.
Popped in. The first thing we heard was, "Unless of course you're a patron." I was like,
Yes.
"Oh crap! Oh, patrons get perks."
Yeah.
I felt so left out because your patrons get perks thing was perfect, and I was like, wait, was it just me that missed everything else?
No. So here, I'll go ahead and do that now, even though it makes no sense anymore. I will go ahead and give our live viewers the chance to see.
We can't rob them.
How much the original reaction I got was probably the reaction I deserved. So here we go. Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that deserves your respect, not your erotic speculations, you hormonal vulgarians. It's Sif Pop.
Nice.
There you
He
go.
gets his thumbs up, maybe two.
Hormonal
A podcast
vulgarians.
that is penis cancer in human form.
That woman deserves your respect, not your erotic speculations.
So good.
All right. Well, that is it. Appreciate you guys, and we will see you on the next stream.